We'll try to be speedy here. This will be a really quick overview of what Gnosticism is if you don't know what it is. I drew this from a series I did on the Da Vinci Code. Someone out there may have seen. So what is Gnosticism? The basics. Well, the Gnostics believe that there is something they refer to as the true God, or the light, or pneuma, which is spirit. And isn't God a spirit? I mean, doesn't John 4 say that? Okay, God is a spirit. He's pre-existent. This God is pre-existent, uncaused, and perfect. Sounds pretty biblical so far. Gnostics imagined the true God of being both male, the Father, and also female. And the reason they thought this was because everything else that exists is produced by this God. So in the Gnostic, this is the early couple centuries of AD, and they don't really necessarily know where babies come from and all that kind of stuff. So they're imagining if this one true God produced everything, there must be something male in there and there must be something female, and then they produce offspring. So that's how they wrote about it, to communicate the idea. Now this true God, or the light, exists up here in its own realm. And then, so there's this sort of barrier that they sort of conceived of. There's the residence of the true God. And then down here is the created material world, which is really a far distance away from the true God. This is us down here, material stuff, And in the middle, there was this middle world or spiritual world. And that was populated by other gods, other divine beings. In Gnosticism, they are referred to as eons. And so the true God essentially took bits and pieces of himself, or this divinity thing that pre-existed everything. Out of that comes different entities. And you notice I have them male and female here. And these are the spiritual beings, the other gods that the true God creates to do whatever he needs them to do. And again, below them is the created universe. They're beyond the universe here. This is down here, the world we know. So these are the true God's essence in different forms. Together they are referred to in Gnosticism as the Pleroma, the fullness. Collectively, all of these beings are the full essence of the true God. Now, in terms of cosmology, the highest eon is called in Gnosticism the Logos. Is that a familiar term? Okay, this is the highest son of the true God, the Logos. The first eon, the first emanation, the first act of the Father. He is the entire likeness and image of the true God. And these are Gnostic statements, okay? He's the form of the formless, the body of the bodiless, the face of the invisible, the word of the unutterable, all these things. And he actually possesses the knowledge of all the eons. He is unquestionably superior. He's the top dog, the top eon. Now, the Logos, right here, again, is the top. And together, the Logos with the true God, the father and mother element in the true God, form the triad. Let's just call it a trinity and be done with it. It's not the same as a trinity. If you know your Trinitarianism, this is not the same. But they're using the three language. Now, as the Gnostic story goes, one of the eons, in fact, the one closest to our world, the lowest eon, but still an eon, was a female eon, and her name was Sophia. She decides, I love the true God so much. I want to be like him. And he did all this creation stuff like he created us. So I want to create too. But I know that he doesn't really want me to. But man, I just can't resist the impulse to be like him and create. So in Gnostic cosmology, she does that. She rebels and decides to create her own thing, her own entity, just to sort of try it out and be like the true God. Now, the result of that, Sophia, I don't know why she's not appearing up here, but she's not. The result of that, if you look at what Gnostic texts say, the Sophia wanted to bring forth a likeness out of herself without the consent of the spirit, the pneuma, the true God, or any consort. She didn't have any other help from any of the other male eons. And so a thing came out of her that was imperfect and different from her appearance. Why did she do it? Well, the Gnostics, of course, view this as a transgression, so they have nasty things to say about Sophia. That she was lewd and the great cosmic whore and all this kind of stuff. What she makes is referred to in Gnosticism as the Demiurge, which fundamentally it means the maker. Okay, we'll get to why. He's also called Yaldabaoth, which is the child who comes forth, also called Saklos, the fool, also called Samael, the blind one, also known as Yahweh, the God of Israel, the God of the Bible. Why is he blind to a Gnostic? Why is he a fool? Because he's arrogant enough to deny that there are any gods beside him. He ignores the eons. He ignores his superiors. He's blind. He's willfully blind, and he's a fool. Now, the Demiurge is sort of a deity unleashed to the Gnostic. Here's our little barrier to our world. As the God of the Bible, the Demiurge is the creator of our heaven and earth. And the Demiurge says, I created this heaven and earth thing. I think I'm going to create something else. I think I'm going to create Archons, rulers, to help me administer my own affairs in this heaven and earth, this universe. Archon, of course, is a biblical term. It's used in the New Testament for the principalities and powers and all that stuff. And he also says, you know what? On earth, I think I'm going to get together with the Archons and we're going to create and enslave humans. Does this sound like Zecharia Sitchin, anyone? He's a Gnostic. Okay, that's all it is. Maybe he never knew he was a Gnostic, but he was. Now, Sophia, which you can't see here for some reason, was horrified at this in Gnostic cosmology. She's like, boy, did I make a mistake. And now these poor humans, they're just going to be slaves. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I can't really tell everybody what I do, and what do I do? What do I do? Well, what she decides to do is she decides to inject some of her divinity into the man, into humanity. So he's not just a lifeless, brainless, soulless critter. He's more than that. He is. And so as he procreates with Eve, so is every human really inside divine. Now, what the problem is for Gnosticism is the human beings have to discover that. That's salvation in Gnosticism. Salvation in Gnosticism is knowing. Knowing what? Knowing this, that you're really divine. What your material world is a world created. The reason there's evil is because its creator is evil. He has built evil into the world and you're trapped in it. Your only hope is to transcend this life by learning and knowing that you are divine. You are in some way attached to the eons and attached to the true God. Does this sound familiar? Okay. And this, this is Gnosticism. This comes from ancient, texts. This is nothing new. It's centuries, millennia old. So if you look at our previous trajectories, we have an eternal divinity. Well, that there, what we're really talking about is the true God. All this evil that you experience, the true God has nothing to do with that. He's good. And we're talking about eternal humanity. Obviously, we are eternal beings. We are divine. And the Logos, man, he's important. He is the top dog. Now, the rest of the story in Gnosticism, who's the hero? The hero is the serpent. Because it's the serpent who comes to Eve and says, hey, I got a question. Did God really, and by God, he's referring to the maker of heaven and earth, the Demiurge. Did God really say that if you ate of this tree, you were going to die? And she says, yeah, we eat it. Even if we touch it, we're going to die. Now that part she's making up. But he says, you're not going to die. If you eat of the tree, your eyes will be opened. You will become as gods. You'll become as Elohim in the Hebrew text. So the Gnostic views the serpent as the hero. He is trying to inform humans of their own divinity, of their own connection back to the true God. And the Demiurge punishes him. So it is a severe inversion of the Genesis story at that point. But it'll preach. I view Gnosticism as the one ring. The one ring that unites and binds all of it, everything. You will find East and West thinkers articulating the very same thoughts. If you're familiar at all with Eastern religion, what I've just been going through is like, yep, bing, 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 point for point, okay? It's just cast in a cosmological story that's different. All the elements are the same. It unites East and West. It unites all religions. Now, not necessarily all adherents, because there are Gnostic Christians, and then there are those of us who aren't Gnostics. But yet, within the umbrella thing we call Christianity, there were a lot of Gnostics. And there are a lot of Gnostics today who will take the term Christian. There are Muslims who are Gnostic, Muslim mystics. You can just read the mystical literature across the board in any religion. You're going to see all of this, okay, all of it. Evolution goes very well with it because we're progressing. We need to awaken to the fact that we're divine, and then realize, like, wow, we live in a world where we really can understand that all of matter, all of reality, and this thing that we imagine as God, it's all one and the same. It's monism. Everything is united. All these experiences that people have, or that I've had, they're real because of this thing we call consciousness. Our bodies are just a filter, like a radio filters sound waves. Our bodies filter consciousness. That's why we have deja vu. That's why we have this experience, that experience, visions and prophets and all this stuff. It all works. It's all real. You get to keep it all. You get to affirm it all. So I think it's comprehensive. It's being validated by science. And what I mean by that is a lot of science writers are saying things that if you're a Gnostic, oh, you love it. Now, there are a lot of science isn't directed toward proving Gnosticism. What I'm saying is a little bit different. That Gnostics have plenty to choose from in the hard sciences to say, we're right. Now, a particle physicist might look at them and say, you're nuts. Okay? The physicists I know would, who are believers, who are dualistic and Christian. But the Gnostic doesn't care about that, because you know what? You know what the Gnostic knows that a lot of Christians don't know? That their numbers are increasing and your numbers are decreasing. You are becoming marginalized. Our view is becoming popularized. Okay, we'll get into pop culture here. But again, the Academy's there. and of course pop culture. Science, I'm going to run through this real quickly. This is a book, if you're into this, if you're into the physics, theoretical physics stuff, I would recommend reading this. It might infuriate you, but James Gardner is a lawyer by training, but he's published in peer review journals. He's into cosmology. And his first book was called Biocosm, and he advocates, now that Ray Kurzweil, this is Kurzweil's opinion of the book, which is positive. Kurzweil is the guy who wrote the book The Singularity. We just, had a quote there from him. Gardner's selfish biocosm hypothesis proposes that the remarkable anthropic or life-friendly qualities that our universe exhibits can be explained as incidental consequences of a cosmic replication cycle in which a cosmologically extended biosphere provides a means for the cosmos to produce one or more baby universes. And that's a little dense, so let me try to unpack that for you. In his Q&A, Gardner's Q&A on his website, we have this. Question: what are the religious implications of the biocosm hypothesis? The hypothesis is inconsistent with traditional monotheistic notions of an unknowable supernatural creator. Well, that's honest, right? There's a discernible and comprehensible evolutionary ladder by means of which mortal minds will one day ascend into the intellectual stratosphere that will be the domain of the superminds. Question: is biocosm just a religious screed in disguise like intelligent design? No, biocosm is adamantly and consistently naturalistic in focus. Now, from Amazon, here's, I think, a better idea what Gardner's saying. Gardner proposes a startling theory that a pre-existing super intelligent race that inhabited a mother universe, some other universe, created ours and tweaked the physical laws of our universe, of the baby universe they made, to ensure the continuity of intelligent life and itself. So all that design stuff that you creationists out there think is the hand of God, it's not. It's the hand of someone else. And all that evidence for the Big Bang, that the universe had a beginning, well, it did, but it was birthed by another universe. In other words, it creates the visual impression of a beginning, but there was something before it, and before that, and before that. It's eternal. It's an endless regress. And this is peer-reviewed. This is in physics journals. Okay, this is not like my website where I'm trying to pretend I'm a physicist. Okay? I'm not. Now, Gardner's second book, The Intelligent Universe, Artificial Intelligence, E.T., and the Emerging Mind of the Cosmos. In The Intelligent Universe, James Gardner envisions a third dramatic alternative, a final state of the cosmos in which a highly evolved form or group of intelligent engineers, has anyone seen Prometheus? Okay, engineers, a cosmic renewal, birth of a new universe, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm going to skip the other stuff about Gardner. He quotes Gardner commenting on Orgel and Crick and life itself. If you're familiar with Crick, one of the co-discoverers of DNA, he believed in directed, intelligent panspermia, that life on this planet, including DNA, was seeded by aliens. Now, Gardner critiques that a little bit. Basically, he's saying, I'm a little bit smarter than Crick here. But Crick was one of those biology idiots. We're physicists here. Now, what about religion scholars? This is Jeffrey Kripal. He is a professor at Rice University, PhD, University of Chicago, and an author that I think you should become acquainted with. This is his book, The Serpent's Gift, Gnostic Reflections on the Study of Religion. Okay, Kripal is a Gnostic. I run into him every year at the American Academy of Religion. Okay, that's what he does. This is from a review. This, again, is a peer-reviewed review of Kripal's book. And just look at what it is. Knowledge is the serpent's gift, knowledge of good and evil, moral and ethical knowledge. We have not been expelled from the garden by the aforementioned petty and jealous God. We would have gone on to taste the tree of eternal life. Again, we forsook knowledge and turned to faith, like they're mutually exclusive. Okay, again, this reviewer is reviewing what Kripal says, and very positively. Though most of us would agree that modernity has had its heyday and the postmodernists make some very good points, we have yet to name a successor that can constructively direct us as a body of discourse forward into new forms of knowledge and understanding. And this is where Kripal steps in and reminds us of Gnosis, not just a bunch of dried out scrolls buried under a layer of pigeon doo-doo, but a viable, promising, indeed perfectly appropriate methodology that can take what is best from modernity and the Enlightenment and leave what no longer works and carry reason and the critical method forward, transformed into what is, for better or worse, a postmodern era. He's saying, look, we've had modernism, postmodernism, and the next thing that needs to happen is we as academics need to commit ourselves to Gnosticism. Okay, this is a religion scholar who teaches at Rice University. Now, I'm going to speed ahead here. Let's see here. Because of pop culture. Now, the way Gnosticism is conveyed to us is typically through stories about extraterrestrials and superheroes, okay? Because extraterrestrials, they can be the gods of old, they can be the Archons. And again, you'll find this too, is discussion of, hey, are there similarities between the Archons and the CT stuff and blah, blah, blah. And superheroes, of course, who are part human but part non-human. They're evolving, they're mutants, they're progressing, or they're divine and they just look human. And so this is how the ideas are committed through science fiction and comic books and all this stuff. Now, the result is really two. You get either a quasi-Gnosticism, where Archons are, these extraterrestrials, using the extraterrestrial idea. And that's where Ancient Aliens are at, that whole idea and the whole series, that aliens put us here. And that's what Prometheus, again, the film, was all about. Supposedly a prequel to Alien. Now, if you watch the movie, you wouldn't get Jesus in the movie. But if you look up the original script online by Ridley Scott, the reason why the engineers in Prometheus wanted to destroy their creation, that would be us, is because they visited us 2,000 years ago and we put them on a cross. That's right in the script. Now, there's a detailed review that I didn't write, but somebody else wrote on, and the guy might be a Gnostic, I'm not sure what he is, but he goes through Prometheus really closely, and it's really remarkable at how many biblical elements are mixed with classical mythology, the Promethean material, in that original script. If you want that, email me and I'll send you the link, okay? Because we don't have time to go through it here. Now, what I want to focus on here, this is Prometheus, just a couple things. One of the writers to Prometheus was a guy named Damon Lindelof. Here are some of his recent credits: Cowboys and Aliens, Prometheus. The new Star Trek film coming out, he was a co-writer. And something that might appear in 2013 or 14 called 1952. 1952 is something you want to keep your eye on, because this is from the blog, what's it called? It's about UFOs in film, cinematic flying saucers or something like that. And I can send you the link too. Disclosure through Disney in 2013. Disney's aborted 1950s UFO acclamation movie. Is it headed for the big screen? So this entry is about the fact that this writer, Lindelof, was allowed into Disney's archives, specifically into something that no one else has gotten to see, because, well, unless they're still alive, that were alive in the 1950s, and that is this. In 1979, a guy named Ward Kimball, who was an Oscar-winning Disney animator, was at a MUFON symposium, MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and he told the story that NASA, or the Air Force, approached Disney in the 1950s to request cooperation on a documentary about UFOs that would help acclimate the public to an extraterrestrial reality. According to Kimball, in exchange for that cooperation, the Air Force offered to furnish the production with genuine UFO footage. Walt Disney agreed and actually started on the project, but it was tabled when the Air Force reneged on the film. It has literally sat in a file drawer since being handed to Lindelof. And so the supposition is that 1952, okay, the year that it was canned, is what the film is about. It's about this project. Now, you can go on YouTube. Disney did create a different UFO film that promoted the idea that UFOs and aliens were real. They never actually released it for public consumption. It got aired. I'm not sure where it aired, but it only aired once, and it never actually made it, like, to consumer TV. But somebody has posted it on YouTube in 3 parts. You can find it. Again, I can give you the links if you email me. Last point. There's a whole scholarly book. This is University of Chicago Press. This is a dense read. It's a scholarly book called Mutants and Mystics, Science Fiction, Superhero Comics, and the Paranormal. And guess who wrote it? Our friend Jeffrey Kripal. He has an entire chapter. If you're into UFOs, this will be shocking to you. His entire last chapter is on Whitley Strieber and communion. The whole purpose of the book is to show how comic books, and specifically the alien theme, has been a useful and wonderful and delightful vehicle for transmitting the truths of Gnosticism. I mean, they're not secretive about this. It's just, here it is, So again, I highly recommend that you read this. Again, he argues that much of the recent popular culture of the US comes from what used to be called the paranormal. He has a third book called Authors of the Impossible, where he, as an academic, says academicians, scholars, ought to own up to the fact that paranormal stuff is real. And he's arguing in favor of paranormal stuff within the academy. He obviously has tenure, because we're not at the point yet where, like, we'd have whole departments of this, in every university. But he is a committed academic and a committed Gnostic. And he is extraordinarily well-read in comic books, pop culture, media, movies. If for no other reason than a reference book, you ought to have that. I mean, it's just really good stuff. So Kripal identifies a super story, a modern living mythology, and beliefs concerning alien contact and humankind's place in the cosmic scheme of things. Again, showing how science fiction, and fantasy owes less to science than it does to earlier occult systems. He even goes into Madame Blavatsky. None of this is new. Okay, the whole alien thing is just rehashed Gnosticism / occultism / theosophy / whatever, fill in the blank, for a technological society. That's all it is. And it's, this is what's going to reach the masses. If you go up to the Internet Movie Database and put in the keywords alien and 2012, for the last year, there are almost 4,000 episodes, either episodes of TV shows or movies, just for last year. That doesn't count YouTube. Okay, that's the stuff that the IMDb tracks, that's released, that you have to pay for. That is not YouTube. And don't do too much of that, or you'll start to get like me. I mean, it's just depressing on one level how exhaustive an effort this is. And it's going to change the way a lot of the church does church and does Christianity, because you got 2 choices. You either stand in opposition to the world or you join, you adapt. And what I'm telling you, this whole presentation comes down to this. The adaptation is going to be led by people who know what they're doing and will control the vocabulary and teach others. They will teach others to mime the vocabulary and morph the theology. And it's only going to take a generation before that becomes the articulation of what Christianity is. And why can't you get on board? Why are you so, antiquarian or just odd? Okay. So again, all of these last two sessions have really been things that have been floating around in my head because of the sequel to the facade. So again, I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing this, but if you haven't read the facade, you ought to. If you have, go up to the website, join the mailing list so that you can stay up to date with alerts about the sequel. And of course, the website, you can contact me and follow me on Twitter there too. So that is the end. We can wrap up. And if you want to do questions, we can try to do that. Or if you got something to go to, feel free.